This is a great day, I think, for all of you. I can't think of a bigger topic than the future of marketing. And then you can insert yourself into that because it's absolutely critical. So I wanted to cover a couple quick things. There are three people that I interviewed for a book recently, and I couldn't bring them with me today, but I could bring their quotes. So I wanted to emphasize the importance of brand purpose. One was actually, you may have heard of Dr. David Ocker, who's known as the modern father of marketing. And he basically said, how important is brand purpose? Your brand purpose, the purpose of your brand is to represent your purpose, meaning you need to have a purpose. Larry Fink, the CEO of BlackRock, said, purpose is not a mere tagline or a marketing campaign. It is the company's fundamental reason for being. Purpose is not the sole pursuit of profits, but the animating force to deliver them. Seth Godin, I had a chance to meet a few months ago, said, today brands need to do something that matters. And he emphasized the word something that matters. So in many ways, as Andrew was saying, that I think brands are realizing that people have their own values. Brands have values. You need to align those in a very perfect way. And the more perfect you can do that, the opportunity is to actually merge the idea of profit with purpose. That is something that nobody talked about 5 years ago, but you can do it. If you think of brands like Tom Shoes, Patagonia, does anyone happen to know the mission statement of Patagonia? All right, it's easy, to save the planet. Everything they do is about saving the planet, and we also sell a few things. So sort of end with a quote from Simon Sinek. Simon Sinek said in his famous TED Talk, people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. All right, exactly. So having the mission, the purpose, and really making that happen, pulling it together. So, all right, with that, quick opening just to talk about the subject. We have a wonderful story to talk to you about today. If you think of pictures of plastic littering a beach, and then flash forward to what if that doesn't happen? What if things like that really can be changed? And that's really what we're going to be talking about today. So I'm going to introduce Caroline Vanderlip. Caroline, let me also just start with, I had the privilege of working for Caroline many years ago at AT&T. Caroline puts her passions and creativity into building businesses like Redish, that we'll talk about today, and is excited to be able to tell the huge environmental impact story. A successful entrepreneur, Caroline has launched businesses with parent companies, CNBC, AT&T, as well as independent entities like publishing technology company SharedBook. Born with a BA from Vassar and an MBA from NYU, Caroline is a lifelong learner, now focused on sustainability and the huge impact that Redish can have as it supports the shift from a linear economy to a circular economy. All right, so why don't we're going to go to a short, I don't have any ads, unfortunately, but I've won awards. I have great ads. Thank you for a wonderful presentation, Andrea. I do one quick thing, though. There's a stat that you mentioned that I jotted down. 84% of consumers really want and love sustainable brands. That leads directly into our topic. So if we could run cue the video, short video that we'll talk about, and then we'll get into our conversation. So let's talk about redish and reuse. Okay, so the video, I think, was a good way to really get a sense of, you take probably 30 minutes explaining what it is. Videos are marvelous for so many different reasons. So why don't we start by, Caroline, can you, some comments on the video?
Sure. So we started Redish 4 years ago and marketed ourselves to our enterprise customers, that's who we focus on, as this industrial warewashing operation that would essentially mimic their laundry service, their uniform service, et cetera, by giving them an outsourced dishware solution in which they could take their single-use disposables that were throughout their cafeteria, their pantries, et cetera, and replace them with reusables. And we, in turn, would actually pick them up every day, take them to an industrial warewashing facility that we had created, and return them. And everyone kept saying, what is an industrial warewashing facility? Because it didn't exist before we created it. And so this video is basically to show what it is that we do in Brooklyn and in Philadelphia, which is where our two facilities are.
Okay, we talked the other day, and you mentioned sort of as a frame of reference, a typical restaurant, right? That takes plates, washes them, brings them back, and as a concept. So when you think about, is there an opportunity for this kind of work and thinking to really expand dramatically, sort of reach that point of the that old division curve where you're going to run over and look at what's going, the tipping point on the curve, yeah.
Oh my God, I don't even know where to take that question. There's so many questions embedded in that. I'll start with the following. In 2020, when I created Redish in the middle of COVID, we were originally focused on restaurants and on takeout. Sustainability was a conversation, but honestly, it was a hum. It wasn't the loud noise that you hear today. And I really think the reason for that is because it was really behind the scenes. The consumer press was not talking about sustainability. Everyone was kind of upset about plastic, but other than Greta, nobody was really talking about it. And I want to give credit, and I can't remember his name, but a Washington Post reporter was the first one to actually do a story about how much plastic we were using. And what he did during COVID is he had 3 weeks worth of takeout, and he put all the residue of that takeout on his lawn and photographed it and wrote a story about it. And it was impressive in not a fabulous way. And to me, that was the start of the conversation on we have to do something in this world around sustainability. We as individuals sometimes feel, and there's so many parts of the prior keynote that I thought were so relevant, but we feel helpless in the face of something as big as climate change, and how can we make individual differences? And that story just kind of spoke to me about ways that we could change that.
Right. Great. Can you talk a little bit about the origin of Redish, how you started?
Sure. It really started with just a recognition that waste could not be managed. Well, I should say, step back even further. It started with a recognition, as I'm sure everybody now knows, that the waste issues that we've got in the world, but particularly in this country, are a great contributor to climate change. I read a statistic, 22% of climate change issues revolve around waste. And up until 2018, as many of you may know, we actually sent most of our landfill to China. And China all of a sudden said, no more. We're not buying this anymore. We're not taking it. And that has changed the whole landscape, if you will, in the US around waste. And a recognition that waste cannot be managed. Waste has to be reduced. The only way we can get to some of the stats that we need to in the future is actually to reduce waste. And that means that everybody in this room and everybody across the country can be a contributor if you can put the systems together to make it easy.
Great. Can you talk a little bit about your mission and maybe even the impact on your clients?
Well, that's what we're all about. So Redish's mission is to create a healthier planet by reducing waste. If you look at the EPA's pyramid regarding waste, you'll see that reuse is at the top. Recycle is kind of in the middle there. We've been brought up with a lot of advertising from the plastics industry and the fossil fuel industry to believe that, plastic is the answer. And they have great marketing campaigns. But unfortunately, a lot of that is greenwashing, and there really is only one way to reduce waste, and that's to reuse. It's not just to reuse plastics, it's to reuse textiles, reuse electronics, et cetera. So we made the decision that we would take this small sliver. There are not a million, sorry, wrong number. There are 1 trillion pieces of food service packaging that are used every year in this country alone by corporations. Think about that, 1 trillion. We can't even count that high. So my guess is it's way more than that. If we can actually reduce that, if we can replace those single-use disposables with a reuse system, then we actually can both do good, be comfortable, feel like we are contributing, and more importantly, it actually allows our corporate clients, so our clients are corporations, hospitals, sports venues, think of it any place where there's a lot of single-use disposable being used by a lot of people eating, where we can make a difference. So what, as everybody knows, a lot of corporations have net 25 goals, net 30 goals, et cetera, for sustainability, and very little knowledge of how to get there. It's a great mission, but they don't have a lot of solutions to get them there. That's number one. Number two, and more importantly, the things that they do don't actually trickle down to their employees. So their employees are not aware. So a company can say, we're doing sustainable things, we're moving towards a net 30, goal, et cetera. But from an employee and vendor perspective, there's no way to measure that. So doing something like Redish, which is kind of where the mission comes from, whereby literally overnight they replace all the plastic in their cafeteria with a reusable solution, starts to visibly show their employees on a daily basis that they do believe in sustainability. They do actually walk the walk, if you will. And that's the mission that flows
Great.
down.
Great. Can you describe your target audience and maybe some of the key industry sectors?
So the target audience is corporations and other institutions that serve a lot of meals and use a lot of single use and create a lot of waste. So our customers are companies like Barclays Bank and L'Oreal and Google and Warner Brothers. So very large companies. A Barclays Bank, for instance, 3 locations. I think they go through something like 5,000 meals just for lunch every single day. And they have gone completely sustainable in line with their mission. So their whole mission as a company is to create sustainability, support companies in the sustainability space. So by actually doing this internally, this being Redish, they actually can continue that message.
Okay, great. So what do some of your clients and their employees think of reuse, including the environmental and the operational benefits of switching to Redish?
Well, I shared this story with Mark yesterday, and I'll share it with you. When we first started, our first client was Warner Brothers. Actually, Discovery. They hadn't bought Warner Brothers yet. And we had a hard time with the employees. This was 2021. Obviously, COVID played a part in this. And there was a lot of publicity, particularly around the plastics industry, about how reusables weren't safe, which of course was not true. But we spent a lot of time with the employees explaining what reuse was, what redish was, the fact that it was clean, it was hygienic, you didn't have to worry. This is what the benefits were. This is the outcome for the planet, et cetera. Just a couple of months ago, we launched at PepsiCo in Westchester, 2,000 employees, and the most common refrain was, "It's about time." And so in a 2-year period, we have seen this tremendous recognition and rise in interest in sustainability, of which, Andrea's quote was very significant, very apropos, and also people's acceptance that they could actually make a difference, and here was a way to do it.
Great. All right. Would you say your biggest competitor is plastic?
No. Our biggest competitor is the status quo. Our biggest competitors are companies and people who want to do the right thing but don't know how to do it, and who are scared of changing, from a company perspective, changing their operation, and from a consumer perspective, changing their habits. And the most important piece of what Redish does is its education and training program. So we give our clients a very, very strange for essentially an industrial reuse operation. We provide our clients with a very significant media kit when they launch the program, along with a lot of training and a lot, both back of the house as well as front of the house. And for those who don't, back of the house is food service, security, janitorial. Front of the house is employees and others who are eating at that establishment. And it was really important that we actually create the marketing and the messaging and give it to them so they in turn could educate their groups, both their employees and back of house.
Okay, great. So where is Redish currently available, and maybe talk a little bit about plans to maybe expand to other regions?
So as I mentioned earlier, Redish has a facility in Brooklyn. It was our first one. We opened this summer in Philadelphia, which means that we service from Wilmington, Delaware now up through southern Connecticut. Our goal is to be in every market in the country. We would be there faster if we could figure out how to finance all of these, what is a combination of infrastructure and tech. But we are currently scouting for our third market right now. I wanted to, this is kind of not relevant to the question, but I think it's really important. We, in the vein of purpose and mission and how that gets conveyed to one's employee base, we did a survey. We still have a very large white shoe law firm as a client, and it's complicated because unlike the Googles of the world and the Barclays of the world that let us come in every couple of weeks and table and answer questions and do great activations and all the things that engage their employees, a law firm doesn't let you in because God knows what secrets you would hear. But in any case, 5 months after launch, they did a survey of their employees, and here are the two pieces that I thought were most interesting. 76% of the respondents, and it was a very high response rate, 76% of the respondents said that they felt more positively towards the company for the fact that they had actually implemented reuse. So here was, kind of the waterfall effect, if you will. And the other component, which is really near and dear to our hearts as a mission, is that 1/3 of the respondents said that because their company had introduced reuse via Redish, that they had actually started to think about circularity in other aspects of their life. And to us, that's the mission. The mission is not just to educate employees. The mission is to have everybody everywhere think about reuse in everything that they do, so that the effect on climate can be seen.
That's a great point. To really, if it isn't present in your mind, you're not thinking about it, you don't change behavior. All right, so have Redish's impact on sustainability and environment been recognized in the industry?
Thank you. Yes, we have been. We actually won the industry award. Andrea explained the Effie, which is much more relevant to all of you in marketing. But in the reuse industry, or the circular economy as it's called, there are awards as well. And we won the one this year for the most innovative company, which is really kind of interesting because we're 4 years old already. But yes, we were the most innovative company. And Preview Inc. magazine has actually chosen us as well for their best of business this year that'll be out in the winter.
Terrific. Can you? Great, good. Do we want to take questions?
So my question is regarding the media kit that you provide the companies. Was that part of the Redish's original, part of the original product package? And is it also specialized / individualized for each company?
Yes, it was. And that's because I really come from a marketing background and felt very strongly that if we didn't lead our clients by the hand, they would not be successful. So without giving too much background in circularity here, the biggest issue with something like Redish is explaining to employees to put them in the right bin. Don't put, oh, by the way, I brought some samples if anyone wants to see. But don't put them in the recycle bin. Don't put it in the trash. If you do, it'll go to landfill, and our mantra is never to landfill, right? So, put it in the right bin, do the right thing, nudge your compatriots to do the same thing. I know it sounds so silly sometimes that, what you're trying to impact is literally when you're finished eating, take this container and put it in the right bin. Don't take it home. A lot of people want to take it home. The big issue for us is how do you make a container or containers that people want to use but aren't so nice that they want to take them home. But don't take them home. If you do take them home, please bring them back, because fundamentally, reuse is about the many times you can reuse it and don't have to remanufacture. And that's where all of the carbon emission and water savings are in the reuse end of things. So we decided to help our clients. And so, yes, we created everything from email communications, tabletop displays, digital communications, et cetera. And we do customize it for them both with their name, and then if they've got something that they specifically want to do that's in a different size or whatever, we will actually customize it for them. So we don't actually print the content. We provide the content, and then they print whatever it is that they want to use.
Great.
I'll come to you next.
Hi, Caroline. My name is James. It's very nice to meet you. What I thought was really impressive was the big washing machines that you showed. Working in a kitchen before, that's exactly how it looks. And I'm sure it's got to be quite expensive. And as one of the 4 P's of marketing, how much at a premium does it cost for a company to use these instead of just traditional plastic things that you can throw away?
It's a great question. Thank you for asking it. It is very expensive to set up one of those industrial washing operations. It will get more expensive in time as we continue to automate a lot of the processes. However, we have priced the product. Well, we don't price the product, we price the program. So that's number one, which is it is, even though some people will do it, they will compare the cost of a compostable container with the cost of our program. And then we spend a lot of time in the business development effort trying to explain that one's a program, one's a product, and trying to isolate the actual hidden costs in that single use. So there are waste hauling costs that go away when you go to reuse because we're essentially hauling back to our facility. There are companies pay delivery fees when they get stock. There are no delivery fees here. It's part of the program. So we isolate each of the real expenses that should be added into the product. And when we do that, we're still at a premium, but it's pennies. And for these companies, given the benefits that they can experience, the other thing I didn't mention is we engineered everything so that the companies could actually get Scope 3 ESG emissions data from this. So for those who don't know, there's Scope 1, 2, and 3 in environmental, social, and governance reporting. This is Scope 3, which is supplier information. There's very little data in supplier information. So number one, they love the data. Number two, they can use it in their reporting. And that's waste avoidance, carbon emission savings, and water savings. And we did that through a life cycle, actually 2 life cycle assessments, very granularly using PhDs and others so that it could be, and peer reviewed, so that it could be actually used by the companies.
I just have a quick follow-up.
Sure.
I want to thank you for your answer. And sustainability has a lot of different assets, parts of it, and one really important aspect is equity. And obtaining a clean future is really important not only to us, but also to people that are in less advantaged areas. And so the companies that you mentioned that you partner with, Barclays, Google, these are massive companies that are definitely able to afford the premium price. But for the smaller businesses that also want to be part of the sustainable future, like the bodegas in New Brunswick here in New Jersey, how can they also be able to afford a sustainable change?
It's a great question. And I've been grappling with it, not on the consumer-facing side, which I think we're not ready for yet, but actually on the public school side. I understand public schools all across the country have a lot of issues that are way more important than what the packaging is that their students use. But there's so much data and proof that if you can teach circularity to an 8-year-old, it's what they will use for the rest of their life, right? So the education is really important. So I've been working with a number of foundations to essentially provide grants that would make up the difference in cost between, in some cases, styrofoam is what they're using still, and a reusable program, with the idea that as reuse scales, the unit economics come down, and so you can actually see a world probably 5 to 10 years from now when those unit economics will be very similar and there won't need to be that subsidy.
Hi, Caroline. Right here. My name is Anju. Great presentation. My question is on, you had mentioned initially you were thinking about going into like takeout and doing that route, and then of course the pandemic probably made a dent in that plan. My question is, are you considering going back into that space? And then also now that with the pandemic, I feel like there's a lot of food delivery, like Cook Unity or like meals in that space. So is that also another space you would consider going into?
So the pandemic helped us strategically in the sense that it forced us to think about institution instead of consumer. It was the best thing that happened to the company, not to the world, but to the company. Because in doing so, I realized that we as a society are not ready for universal circularity. If you ask anybody on the street what circularity means or what reuse means, they really don't know and probably don't care. And so I think there's a real education that needs to take place, which starts with educating people in what's called a closed environment, like a corporation, like a hospital, things of that nature, and then allowing them to understand how easy it is to change that behavior and then to start thinking about how to take it into the consumer space. So I think the trajectory of new ideas is really important, and how you take that new idea and you infiltrate the population. I think that's number one. Number two, there are a whole slew of efforts just starting with cities looking at reuse as an ecosystem, meaning where there's a public-private partnership between folks like us on the back end, because you can't do reuse if you can't wash it, right? And you can't wash it at scale in a restaurant or in your home or anything else. And when I say scale, guys, I'm talking about hundreds of thousands of pieces every day, which hopefully over time becomes millions. So cities have gotten involved, and there's actually, I don't know how I know this, but I do, Hilo, Hawaii, Galveston, Texas, Savannah, Georgia, and Ann Arbor, Michigan are 4 of the cities that are looking at creating an ecosystem where everybody in that city would go to reuse, meaning I'm walking down the street, I run into a coffee shop, I get a coffee, it comes in a reusable cup, I walk to my office, I can drop the coffee cup in my office, and the system knows that the inventory came from the coffee shop, right, and can credit it accordingly. And so if you think about schools and restaurants and coffee shops and companies and museums and all the entities that make up a city, if you will, if everybody in that environment is incented to do so, and honestly, what does it mean? It means putting bins on sidewalks that say reuse. That's where the city comes in, right? So the city comes in both. I want to go back to that question about how to support from an equity standpoint. So what a lot of cities are experimenting with that are looking at reuse is how can I incent the restaurants and the bodegas, et cetera, to go to reuse. So they're actually giving stipends. So in Seattle, as an example, any restaurant who goes to reuse is getting $500 from the city to make that transition. So I do believe that universally we will need government, local, state, and federal to get involved in order to really move to a circular economy, but it's starting to happen.
Let's put a round of applause for Caroline.
Great job, thank you, wonderful, wonderful.